Two.
All right, it's another episode of Who the Heck Are We? The squad is back for more. Our topic today will be on prep to pro, assessing or breaking down how things work from the grassroots level all the way up to professional sports in the games that we love. Claro Manzano here again. So I'll be taking charge of this episode. Join me, of course, Claudia Perrine, Lance Fernandez. Sir Jay De La Cruz is not here. He's prepping for the PBA bubble. May hashtag na ba yung PBA bubble, guys? I don't know.
Hashtag plastic balloon.
Ayun. All right. That's the last episode nga pala.
Or di ba they're
And
saying, let Calvin play.
ayun, I think
Ah.
that's the hashtag of
And
the
I guess he will be
tournament.
playing. Yeah, he had GAB license already.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Pending seminar and he's ready to go.
Yeah.
Yun.
So excited with that.
Okay, so we have a special guest. We have Maharlika FC's Enrique Ortiz. He is one of their goalkeepers. Great to have you on board, Enrique.
Nice to be on board.
Well, thank you.
All right, guys. So
So for this episode, the Who the Heck Are We is actually canceled because I'm sure a lot of people know who Enrique Ortiz is, right?
he's well known in the football circuit. Nomads, when I went there, of course, there are a lot of guys. They're all talking to him.
Yeah.
Parang mayor of Nomads. No?
No naman.
How's the preparations going, by the way, Enrique?
It's good. It's really good. I think everyone's still at this point where we're happy just to be outside. Like,
Yeah.
big smiles on everyone's faces, even though the coach is killing us. The other day, Dan Matsunaga started training, and he was just laughing the whole time because he was so happy to be outside. So, yeah, it's good. And I think in a couple of weeks, I think we'll be match ready. The quality of the team is there, definitely. Maybe not so much the youth. There's not so much youth in the team, especially with guys like Anton and Misa. But
What's your
their clash
average
is still there.
age? What's your average age?
Yeah, do you have a computation already? Or maybe
I
you have a
would
number in
say-
your head?
Number in my head would probably be about 28 because we have guys who are like, we have youth players as well, like 16-year-olds as well.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so
Nice.
they bump that average down by a lot.
They really do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's,
30
it's
year old
Anton,
like
and,
the curve.
Anton and Misag pulls the age up.
Yeah, and then
Just
you
by
have
the two of them.
you have 16-year-olds then bagsak yung average through those guys, diba?
Yep. Top and bottom.
Yeah. All
Clark,
right.
before you ask, I want to know, Enrique, how did you cope up with your training during the pandemic?
Well, I'm a bit lucky because where I live, it's a little compound, and I know my neighbors around. Of course, my fiance kind of helped me as well. Like when we were in our quarantine, she was just like throwing balls at me and stuff like that.
Hindi naman galit.
My konting galit.
Okay.
Ayun, at least may avenue to
Sometimes.
let it out, no?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so I live in a little compound, and there's a little piece of grass there that I could use. And I had one of our neighbors here who also plays football was there, so him and I would do a little bit of training here and there, and he had a pretty decent shot. So he would kick balls at me, and
Okay.
yeah, it's been
Wow.
pretty good.
Good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
best of
busy.
luck to the team and the upcoming
Thank you.
season for you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, that's great. You got to spend your lockdown in a productive way to help you, so you don't have much catching up to do when you guys
Yeah,
got started in training.
of course, there's a bit of a like trying to get back into it because the space is different.
Mm.
Mhm.
But in terms of physically, it's kind of there still. And when we as soon as we got back into it, it was like riding a bike. You know what I mean? Like everyone was
Yeah.
just so happy to be there.
But it's also hurdling the mental aspect, no?
Yeah, but the team's morale is so good, and it's really helpful that we have guys who are experienced.
Right.
Like for example, for me personally, I've been talking a lot to Wako Kanyas, because he's a defender. We have to
Right.
have that kind of relationship, and he's been very helpful to me, like in terms of getting over that mental aspect.
Right. Very
Yeah.
good. There you
Yeah,
go.
Waco, of course, is a fixture in the Philippine football circuit, so he
Yeah.
definitely knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Been around for some time. Yeah, great experience. So, shall we get the show on the road for tonight's topic on the
Sure.
podcast? So again, it's breaking down how things go from prep to pro. We can go football, volleyball, basketball, with the way things work locally and overseas. So maybe to start off with basketball, Lance, we could chime in also here with your experience before we go to Claudia. Um, so maybe start out mini midgets. The names are funny when you start out. Mini midgets, in grade school. Then there's the aspirants. That's pretty much the
Mm-hmm.
JV, Claudia.
Yeah.
And then you go juniors,
Yep.
and then seniors is college already. After that, you hit the PBA,
Mm-hmm.
or you
You're right.
go to the NBA if you're a superstar, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
sometimes they even call the mini midgets mosquitoes. You know, when you go to barangay leagues, they call it the
ayun.
mosquito division, and then before after that midgets. But sometimes it's mini midgets, sometimes it's mosquito. Oh.
I find that
Yeah,
really
that
weird. You call them mosquitoes.
Yeah, I find it
well
weird
because
too, honestly. I grew up
everybody's
here.
just trying to slap the ball around. That's why. There's no play. Everybody's just trying to slap a mosquito, trying to ask for the ball. So that's why I guess it's called the mosquito division. Everyone is asking for the ball. There's no point guard. Everybody's a shooter, even though they cannot shoot from the outside. So that's why it's called the mosquito, I guess. Everybody's doing like this. Hey, I'm open. So
Tapos takbo
I
na ng
guess that's
takbo.
why.
Ding, 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 di ba?
Ano ba to? Hashtag alleged shooter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the young level, you look at it, to quote one of my teachers in trams, naging larong buko daw yung game eh. It
Kapag
was
ano,
a
I think
really
si Lance
scrappy
kind
game.
of froze. I think he got bitten by a mosquito. So
Yep.
Yeah.
there you are. He's back. He's back.
Yeah.
He froze
So
for a bit.
sorry for the interruption.
Ah.
So, Claro was able to pretty much describe the hierarchy of basketball in the Philippines. And given the passion of people with the sport, it's the most organized among all in terms of grassroots. Because the local government, even the local government supports it. Not saying that other sports are not supported, but
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to hierarchy of sports, basketball is always at the top. It has been there, well, since the Americans came here. It has been there. It's the premier sport um, then and now. So that's why you have a surplus of talent. And when you have a surplus of talent, there will be a lot of people who would like to organize leagues from the grassroots up. That's why you have the NBTC. In college, you have UAAP, NCAA, CESAFI, PCCL. There's a lot of leagues when it comes to basketball. So it's really challenging to go up in terms of skill level
Mm-hmm.
because you are really under the microscope since you are young. Since you become SBP or passerelle, somebody's looking after you already. Somebody's looking at your talent and guiding, keeping a watchful eye on you up until you become high school and then they recruit you for college. So, if, especially now that it's easy to scout because uh, you have cell phones, you can record videos. So
You can make your own reel
you can make
already.
your own reel.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right about that. You can make your own mixtape. So there's no escaping talent now across all sports. Huh? But in terms of basketball, there are sadly, there are more people invested in basketball. That's why you cannot really avoid talent scouts, talent agents, whatnot, if really you are good at it. So in terms of progression, basketball, we are okay in terms of progression. However, siguro may concern lang about basketball or for any collegiate sports that is. Well, players tend to overstay in college. I will say it upfront. We have 24-year-old college students. They're still playing out their eligibility 5 years, 4 years, and then when you ask them how old are you, 24, but you compare it to other pros in Europe. Tony Parker was a pro when he was 19.
Exactly.
Luka Doncic.
Luka, 16,
Si
right?
Luka was 16. Oh. So compare, and then syempre pag college ka, you have to balance studies with your basketball. So they cannot really focus 100% on skill development. So you have a 24-year-old college baller compared to a 19-year-old pro baller. So naglalag behind talaga yung 24 kasi he couldn't
Yeah.
devote 100% of his time. So I guess that's where the problem lies across all collegiate sports. Hindi nakakapag-focus ng more time yung mga talent na imbes na mahasa pa yung ma-develop pa yung talent nila, they have to devote their time to other matters kasi they have to go to school and all the requirements that comes with it. So
Very good observation. Yeah. Oh, okay.
But speaking of the flow, it starts in mini midgets. Are there any younger age groups, if I am correct? Enrique, Claudia, would you happen to know?
In basketball?
Lance Siguro. Yeah, and basketball. Because I don't know. For me, as far as I know, mini midgets, you're about 11,
When I
12
grew
years old.
where I grew up,
Yeah, go ahead.
our barangay league, you could join at pretty much any age, like the youngest age group. Like if you're 9 years old, you can join, but you probably won't play because it's barangay league. It's really sometimes you don't play,
Yeah,
and
I
then
think that
when you get to 11, 12, that's when you kind of start to play, and that's already mini midgets in school.
yeah, because that's the stage where ayun, there's no younger age group. So I'm not so sure because I've seen village leagues, for example, like Makati. They have I don't know how young these guys are. They lower the rim for them. So I don't know, is it 6, 7 feet? So at least these
Oh, wow.
guys, are much shorter, can properly develop their shooting form and everything. But Claudia, how about you? What's your take on maybe how things go in a nutshell? Perhaps we're starting off with basketball.
Well, because I studied in a different environment. No, I studied in an fortunately I studied international school. So
Mm-hmm.
for us, the sports program in the school that I studied in had a had a very good sports program where they would let you join small tournaments against international schools. Diba? So we already started having midget basketball, diba? Lower school, and then middle school we had our JV, middle school basketball, and then when you're in your senior
I think we lost you for a bit, Claudia. Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So grade 9 to grade 12, you could either be in the depending on your skill, you could be JV or varsity,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then from there, you could be developed to be going to uh, overseas to play,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the experience I had, no, because of for I was very fortunate to be in both sport, which was football and basketball. I got to play overseas. But in terms of your grassroots, I'm seeing the good grassroots in football. I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing it here. It's growing exponentially. Unlike siguro before, unlike siguro 10 years ago, it was a bit different. But the football here now, you have the Alaska Cup, diba? You have that, but it stops. Eh. The problem it stops. Like they only have it for summer,
Not as continuous, yeah.
not as continuous even in basketball. You don't see that much. You have the Milo Best, and then it stops, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's no growth. Unlike you say you go to Australia or you go to Europe, you could be joining a club, and there's a continuous growth in your skill, whether it be soccer, football, or basketball. So I think that's what's lacking. If you ask me, I'm not sure if that's the question, but I think that's where we're lacking in the Philippines is the continuous training in the skill level, right? So, kumbaga, if you're 8 years old to 12, there should already be a certain league for that age group, whether it be basketball or football, whether it be even in volleyball, right, or in badminton. So there should be those categories for each age group, which I don't think the Philippines has adapted to that yet. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about football. Enrique, baka you could help us with more.
Yeah, I think with football, it's improving definitely. Like that before when surely when I because I started a bit late. I think I was about 11, about yeah about 11 when I started playing. So I was a bit later than some of our other some other people who start at like 8, 7. At 11, I didn't consider myself very good, and I've seen kids who are 11 who could play in under 14, who could play in under 15. So nowadays there are certain um, academies, certain schools that pay attention to these things, like Ateneo, for example. I know they really pay attention to their grassroots program. I'm currently working with GOM with Darren Hartman. Bit of a bias for me because Darren was actually my first coach. Um, but his program is really good, and they have the under 11s or under 12s have two or three players that, like, from based on what I see now, if they continue at the rate that they're going, they can play abroad easily. Their skill level is already that of an average player in, you know, in Europe, maybe even.
I think one thing that's nice in football, what you guys are mentioning, is that you can start out small because first it's 11 aside for the pros, of course, and the older age groups. But when you're a kid, you start out seven aside. Some
Oh,
countries even start one on one and then they just work their way up.
Mm.
That's
in
what we heard
Germany,
overseas, right?
example, in Germany, all the kids are required to play futsal.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. You're
Yeah.
required to play futsal.
And that's just a they have this basic understanding of how their control is supposed to be, and that way when they move on to the bigger sizes, it's a bit easier.
Right.
But yeah, I think futsal for me is key, because I've played futsal as well, and futsal in the Philippines, if we want football in the Philippines to improve, I think futsal is a key part of that.
Yes, and
Mhm.
I believe I could see that also, especially with the women's futsal. If you
Hmm,
notice that's also growing here and also for just also for grassroots futsal. You're right.
definitely.
Yeah, you're right, Enrique. In terms of futsal, the tactics, the skill level, it helps a lot for kids.
That's another thing actually, is the women's football, I think, has such a high ceiling because around the world women's football is growing.
Hmm.
All of a sudden now people started caring about the women's super league in England because a lot of the US players, women's national team players, are playing in big clubs
Yeah,
in
they're
England
moving
now.
there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's this global interest already in women's sport, which is great. Um, but I think the Philippines is one of the countries that could take advantage of that because our women's national team in particular is already doing quite well.
They're doing so well.
Yeah,
Exception. Yeah.
Yeah, we
One
came
goal,
so
one
close
goal,
to the
one
medal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one
goal,
goal.
really
one
close.
goal, di ba?
Mhm.
It was one goal.
It was just one goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To
It's
And
segue, just to jump ship from basketball and football to concluded basketball, I can't really recall seeing any 8-year old leagues and below in the school level. I think it was more on the village. That's
yeah.
something I just noticed. I didn't see any back when I was playing, back in the day when we were in school. But Lance, do you perhaps have an idea how it works in volleyball? Also, what league, what age do they start normally? Because how it works in the Philippines, normally you play in the school, you play in your
Mm,
school, right? That's
yeah.
where the talents come from.
yeah.
That's where your first organized tournament always comes from in the Philippines,
Mm-hmm.
in schools. I guess before we jump into volleyball, I guess the reason why there are no 8-year-old divisions in basketball, I guess there's an unwritten rule that when you reach grade 4, that's the time you start becoming sorry, excuse me, varsity player. Because in our school, I had a talented classmate who is good at basketball. Just so happened that we were grade 3 before, so he couldn't play for the varsity team yet for elementary. The minimum is grade 4, which was like 10 years old. Ganun. So I guess there's an unwritten rule among all schools. When it comes to volleyball, it's pretty much straightforward. There's not much divisions as compared to basketball is. Basketball kasi, like you have, uh, let's say, 8 to 12, 12 to like 15, 16, ganyan. May divisions eh. In volleyball, it's more like grade school, high school, college. It's
So
pretty straightforward. Parang tatlo lang siya. It's not as segmentized as basketball. So, if you're good and you are with a grade school that has a volleyball team, then they recruit you to join whether you're grade 4, grade 5, or grade 6. Wala talaga siyang age bracket as compared
right.
to football and
Oh,
basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So parang tatlong main division lang talaga siya, grade school, high school, college. So I guess that's where the problem lies. Kasi na-generalize mo lahat ng talent.
Interesting.
Minsan, kapag mas masyadong bata, tapos pinalalaro mo sa matatanda, it could hurt the confidence, it could hurt the development. So, minsan doon nagkakaroon ng problema. Hindi siya masyadong segmentized katulad ng basketball and
Right.
football. It's just one general category or three main categories rather ang nangyayari. Kaya, that's, I guess, one of the reasons why, well, in terms of Southeast Asia na lang, we lag really in development when it comes to volleyball. We really couldn't defeat Thailand or Indonesia. Kaya, I guess that's where the problem lies. Not hindi masyadong segmentize and specialize yung training sa volleyball.
I think one thing there is if you're saying it's not segmentized, maybe it's just the bigger players who are just going to prevail over everyone else. Kasi baka you have this player here, grade 7 na, and then all of a sudden he has an opponent or teammate, medyo totoy, grade 4 or grade 3 pa rin. So in that situation, I think
I think a big part of it might be. I mean, I could be wrong, but it might be just the general height.
Kasi kapag
Like-
matangkad ka lang.
That's what I mean. Like
yeah, it's just height, physique. No,
physique. In a sport like football, for example, where I wouldn't say it doesn't matter because it does, but you can get away with it sometimes. If you're a skilled enough player, you can get away with it. You know, like the best player in the world is just about as tall as you and I, Claro. Like one of the best. I mean, I'm not gonna get into that, but
You don't want to get into that debate.
Avoiding controversy by
maybe we
Enrique
need to have you
Who's
back
that?
next time. We'll talk about this.
That's another episode altogether.
Okay,
Playing
yeah,
for
nice one.
Juventus or is he playing for Barcelona?
he's begrudgingly playing for Barcelona.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a precise term, begrudgingly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he's not a very tall guy. Like he's a little bit shorter, if I'm not mistaken. He's a little bit shorter than we are, Claro. Like
What is
and
he?
he's-
5'6", right? 5'6".
he's about 5'7", yeah, 5'7",
Yeah,
5'8".
because you and I are like 5'9" and a half.
Yeah,
He's
but
shorter than us.
and that's what I mean. And he's top player of all time. Like, so you can get away with it, but you don't see basketball players who are undersized. The most like the best undersized player, I would say now is probably like Steph Curry, but he's 6'4". Like
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
don't get
yeah.
that. You don't get that. And in volleyball, it's the same. Like you're not gonna pick the short kid first. You know what I mean?
That's true.
And I think
Yeah.
that's why it's a bit different with basketball and with football, because we had a couple of teammates, Claro, when we were playing basketball in Southridge, who were fantastic on the ball,
Yeah.
technique, skill, but because he was so small, you know what I'm talking about. But because he was so small at the time, because he's taller than us now, but because at the time he was so small and he was so young, coach kind of just put him in the team so that he wouldn't feel bad.
I think
Yeah.
what coach did there was they put him in a development role where, okay, he's good enough, but his body wasn't ready yet. And I
Yeah.
tell you, he became a monster in high school.
Is this a
Yeah.
football or basketball?
Basketball. Yeah, I couldn't lock down the guy anymore in high school.
So he had this
He-
growth
he-
spurt.
He
Yeah,
grew a few
yeah.
inches and became amazing. Like,
Yeah.
Welcome
No, but you
puberty.
Him playing with
Puberty.
a smaller player playing against much bigger guys. You know, may extra discarte yan eh, diba? You have to outthink your opponents and everything.
but I think the general issue with that is that you can't put, we only had, I think, 2 or 3 of those kinds of players in our team.
Mm-hmm.
So it limits the number of talent you can bring in.
Yeah, and maybe the thing was in basketball, you have guys like Muggsy Bogues and Earl Boykins, and these guys made it because of their
Squad
talent
player.
also.
Yeah.
And
I'll
they're-
even
they're
put
tough, yeah.
Isaiah Thomas, like current
Oh.
Isaiah Thomas. I'll put that because in Boston he was amazing.
You can count in there, yeah. No,
I'll
but you
put that.
see that height can prevail in the early stages. In the basketball aspect, right? But of course, we also see these shorter players with their tremendous skill who are able to work their way up too, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely.
All the players we named here, you see Aljun Maleshu, he's not a very tall player, but he has the skill also. But of course, you still get where you're coming from, where basketball, maybe basketball, even volleyball is a sport where height can give you an advantage. There's a reason why it's called a giant's game, but I'm not discounting them. I'm not discounting these
No.
guys at all.
Definitely.
It's just that the startup stage where it's the bigger players who can prevail. But it's really but
Mhm.
these guys who aren't the biggest, the tallest, they're gems and they're nice to see in the game.
Yeah.
Also, they give you a breath of fresh air. And it's great that we have these people out there who are playing.
Oh,
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we can relate to these people. Those were not blessed with height but are talented. And just to add some points to volleyball, you cannot teach height kasi. We always know that. Eh.
yeah.
So even college scouts, they look for the tall players because it's easier for them to teach this tall player how to block. Immediately they'll put it at middle blocker and then they'll teach you schemes na anticipate for the ball, read where the spiker is going, and it's a long process to teach, but as long as you have the height, you have the timing, and you have the anticipation, you can thrive eh, as long as you have the meters going for you or the inches going for you. So I guess that's why they really look for talent tall players. Like there's this 10-year-old women or lady in Zambales who is already like 6'1".
Oh
Wow.
wow, that's tall.
So somebody posted the picture of the young girl in one of the volleyball pages groups on Facebook, and immediately once it was posted, the coach of FEU went.
Wow. Okay.
So alam mo yun, the customary picture when you try to scout, when you try
Yes,
to
always.
recruit, diba? Yung
Regardless of sport, lalo na ngayon, no?
may damit, ganyan,
May
may shake
exodus in
hand.
one college sport, 'di ba?
Yes,
Back
so
to you,
that's
Lance,
what
sorry.
happened. Yes, that was happened, Claro. So I'm not sure if FEU was the only one. Baka sila lang yung may picture. So who knows? Enyo has been recruiting abroad or everywhere else. So
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
knows who went to that girl? So they really look for height in volleyball kasi you cannot teach that eh. Pero
Height is
yung
fine.
skill, you can add that later eh. You can develop the player basta may height eh.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
true.
there's some players who can be developed, no,
Yes. Mhm.
given those situations. Yeah. One thing also that's interesting to point out, we're just speaking of the height requirement in two of the famous sports, no, in the Philippines. There is this player. He posted a picture. I think he was with his sister, and they saw like, whoa, she's also hella tall, like her brother. And all of a sudden, everyone's going, oh, bring him to Coach Ramil, bring him to Coach Ramil. You look at
Oh
all the
yeah.
replies to that tweet. So bring her to Coach Ramil. Similar
Mhm.
situation, just to what Lance just narrated.
Yeah.
It also shows how sports gets quite competitive. Here we can jump to you, Claudia Enrique, with football. I think there isn't really much of a height requirement here and there. You can be a big, you have height. Okay, you can play keeper or maybe a center back to head the ball, or you can even play a striker. Like, is that
Well,
Crouch? He's heading the ball in with
Peter
his height.
Crouch is tall.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, 6'7" if I'm correct.
7. Yeah.
well, it
But
does
height,
help.
yeah, it does help. But it's so weird to have like a striker who's like Peter Crouch, right? It's,
But
it
I
helps.
mean, it it helps because like in Maharlika now, for example, is we it depends on the style of play. Like
Mhm.
Mm.
like if you're the type of team that keeps the ball on the ground, then you can have it. Everyone's being kind of small actually. You can because your focus is on possession and maybe not so much anything in the air. But if you're the type of team who wants to counterattack more, and then you're looking for players who are pacey, and then you're looking for one or two players who are also quite strong.
Yeah.
So that if you're sending the ball long, he's going to win the ball. And I like using that example because that's how we played at Nomads all the time. I loved
Mhm.
it because I was the keeper, and as soon as I caught the ball, the first person I was looking at was
The
our
tallest
striker.
one.
Our striker was quite tall. He was
Yeah.
quite a big, and he was strong. So he's a built guy as well. Maybe not so much now. He's a bit older now, but uh, but he was very good at heading the ball as well. Scored quite a few goals. But he would just flick the ball backwards with his head, and that's a counter attack right there, and
Mhm.
that helps a lot. But it's one of those things with football where it has its own drawbacks because you could get injured as well. Like I
Yeah.
know a lot of tall guys who get injured a lot. You know, So I think height in football is not a requirement, but with a coach that knows how to use it, it can be a big plus.
I was gonna second that. If you compare the height between basketball, volleyball, and then football, height is might in volleyball and basketball.
Mm-hmm.
But in football, it's not necessarily your strength. Tama din si what Enrique said. It depends on your like, coach's tactics, diba? Unlike in basketball and volleyball, if you have a tall player, wow, diba? Attack the you get attack the post. Like Junmar Fajardo, like he's 6'7", diba? Attack the post. Nobody could guard
Oh,
him. The same with
he's
volleyball.
7, right?
6'9" ata, 6'9",
Junmar?
9 or
Lance?
6'10", ganun.
9 or
Ayun.
6'10".
Yeah.
And then in volleyball, you just the Santiago sisters are what 6'6" and
Jaja is 6'6", and then
yeah,
Din
Jaja
is like 6'2".
6'2". You just give them the ball. Whack. Who could beat that? Like I a 5'7" against a 6'7" spiker. Oh my god,
Mhm.
it's scary. But when you're in football, it depends on the tactics. And tama naman din si Enrique. It really depends.
Mhm.
But um but it's also funny because in my experience when I was playing I played in international school, so
Mhm.
my teammates were taller than me, right? So I started as a guard, so I would be the point guard in the wing.
Oh, we didn't know that. We always thought you played big, huh?
Yeah, so for the
Yeah.
first 4 years of my basketball career, well, when I was in varsity, so when I would play overseas, I would be the wing, so I would be the shooter,
Mhm.
slasher. So that's how I developed my skills. Then I
Mhm.
went to university. I went to college here. I was the tallest, one of the tallest. So I had to move to the post. But the good thing is, I had the ball skills to be a stretch center,
Mhm.
right?
A
So
la
sometimes I would,
Anthony Davis.
yeah,
Mhm.
I would take the ball and be the point guard. So if we wanted to be a tall team and fast, they would put me as point. And
Yeah.
I was actually listening to, I think it was yesterday that when the Lakers and the Miami. I'm not sure who mentioned it, but Anthony Davis. It actually happened to Anthony Davis,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
Yeah. So were you saying that Enrique earlier? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
He
diba?
he he just like what is it? He was a guard in high school,
Yeah,
and then he just
Growth
grew.
spurt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he had a
exactly.
growth spurt, and now
Growth
he
spurt.
has all the skills,
yeah,
Yeah,
and
puberty found him, and then well, the rest is history.
yeah.
That's
So,
true.
now he's gonna win a championship.
but what I want. Oh my
To,
God.
To
Claudia
Claudia's
Lakers.
quote unquote excitement.
Lakers as the magic
Oh,
word for
honestly,
Claudia.
hopefully when this shows, we go to Game 7. But just extra. I mean, you got Miami's losing two players,
Well, yeah.
Adebayo and
Yeah, two big players at
two.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
not just any players, huh? But
yeah.
Mhm.
main
So
players.
That's why I'm saying it with a little bit more certainty now than
Yeah.
I would have.
You gotta be sure, Enrique, because someone might turn you into a meme within the next few weeks.
yeah,
Yeah.
but before we transition to you, Claro, one thing I do wanna say is that the reason why we should also look into having a grassroots is the fundamental skills, the basic skills, which all players tend to forget. Do you know that there's a lot of professional basketball players that do not know how to dribble the ball properly?
I
And
think
I
there
will
are.
not,
Yep,
yeah, I will not
I'm
specifically,
on board there.
yeah, here,
Yeah,
even if,
just by looking at how they play, you know who they are.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
they
They'd
don't,
rather pass the ball first than dribble 5 times.
yeah,
Yeah.
diba?
Eh,
So
yeah. And if you're the opponent, you're saying dribble, dribble, dribble for obvious reasons.
yeah,
Yeah, you're
let them
baiting it.
dribble.
Yeah, you're putting some space between you and the dribbler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're baiting him to dribble, but he doesn't want to because well,
Mhm.
may takot talaga dribble.
Yeah.
So that's the importance of grassroots, whether be in a university setting or in a club setting. I think the fundamental teaching or the fundamental coaching is the skills. You have to always go back to the skills.
Mhm. Yeah. In connection, that goes with every coach. They have their own school, they have their own respective team, so they take care of their little group.
Yeah.
And then that way they are contributing to Philippine sports, whether it be football, volleyball, basketball, you name it. Yeah. And sorry, I just need to say this, Claudia, because you played all positions. So when you were in college, the announcer could have gone, And here you go. She starts at center but plays forward and
Yeah,
guard.
yeah. There was a time where I remember I was playing. Brett played against the University of LaSalle, so we played against LaSalle.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I was the one doing the jump ball, right? So I got the ball and I gave it to my teammate, and then she passed me the ball, and the person that was guarding me was their center, and I told her I'm the point guard.
Oh, nagulat, no?
Yeah, nagulat siya. Oh, then so I just drove the ball and shot it, and then they had to change the whole composition, but that's also again that's the beauty of being able to learn the skills,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
there's actually one question I want to ask Enrique is with goalkeeping, as a goalkeeper, you're the current goalkeeper, right?
Yeah.
How is your learning of your skill in the field as a field player and as a goalkeeper? Their training is different. I mean, even when you were young. I mean, when you were young, I'm not sure if people want. Hey, I'm like an 8-year-old. I want to be a goalkeeper. As an 8-year-old, you want to play in the field, score the goals.
Yeah, when I started playing, I wanted to play strike. I wanted to score all the goals.
Yeah.
Clara knows this of me. I
You're a
like
striker
scoring,
in terms of few occasions, huh? And I was the goalkeeper because there is no one else.
and I
Exactly.
scored.
Nobody wants to be the goalkeeper, di ba?
No,
Isn't
Or,
it?
nobody
or,
used to think.
or they assign the weak link in the group usually.
That's true. That
Yeah,
is
you
so
cannot
true.
run that fast. Okay, you guard the net.
Ako, ano, it's
Tama.
ako they put me
Okay.
because I was playing basketball, hand-eye coordination. Pero there's a big disclaimer. When the opponent was starting to creep into our half for safety, Enrique and
Switch.
I didn't even have to talk. Switch.
It was eye
and,
contact. It was like, okay.
and he made like 3-4 saves. And then after
Wow.
there was a goal because
Then
I was part of the defense. So I'm part of that.
Okay.
But you see, Enrique just stopped 4 shots. But this is in intrams. It was super. It's just
yeah, it was for fun.
totally for fun. Yeah, yeah. Going back, you guys were saying.
But yeah, I started out. I was playing right wing. I think
Okay.
I like to play in the wing because there was a lot of space, and I wasn't the best like dribbler, but I thought I was quite good at. I wanted to be like David Beckham. David Beckham was like my guy. Like I wanted to play like that. Like not so much dribbling, just a lot of free kicks. I always like to take free kicks. I always fought with um Matthew Custodio when we were young because he also wanted to score all the goals and he was better at it than me. Still is. But yeah. But I have really bad asthma. So one training session I just got it really bad, and then because I'd also played basketball, they were like, okay, why don't you try playing keeper? I mean, I wasn't the tallest, but I was on the taller side. So I did learn the basic skills because even though they played me keeper, we would have the same training
Hmm.
until I was about 13. That was when I had my first keeper coach, who passed away actually recently. But yeah, and that my learning curve from just playing keeper, um, because I had like basic passing skills and basic dribbling skills. I had that set. So my learning to play keeper was a bit better because I understood that strikers wanted to score a certain way.
Hmm.
Because I was taught, if you want to score, hit it at a certain height. So when you're a keeper and you're going through your keeper training, um, you're thinking, okay, the striker's gonna want to score this way because I was taught this. So it helped a lot, and I think, and it happens a lot now where kids who start young and play keeper at a young age, they kind of miss out on that. I'm lucky that I didn't miss out on that, but they kind of do miss out on that. And it with football, you have to know the basic skills. I'll
Hmm.
admit that I'm not like Alison Becker, who's my teammates aren't gonna pass the ball back to me so I can do tricks. But it's still important because sometimes they'll have to. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're gonna have to pass the ball. When you have guys like Schrock and Marignon who are pressuring the defense, they have to be able to trust me with the ball on my feet, and that's just the way the game is.
Yeah.
But back then, when I started out, the game wasn't like that. You know what I mean? So like kids now, I think there's a bit more pressure to be more well, like to be better at being well rounded
Hmm.
with players now, because at any point in time, the game now is so fluid, and I think it's the same with basketball. You know, wherein
True.
back then a center was a center, you know, a true center who played on the post, who lived on the post. But nowadays, you know, Joel Embiid lives on the 3 point line, and it's the same with football. Like Jesus Navas is a good example. He plays in Sevilla. He's the captain of Sevilla. When I first heard of Jesus Navas, he was a right wing. Like he scored a lot of goals, crossed the ball a lot. Now he plays right back, and
Like defend.
that's yeah, he became a defender, and that's just because at a young age they know their basic defending skills and they have their basic skills. And nowadays, kids have to be really well rounded, and well, they have in the Philippines especially. I've seen because like when I was younger, it was like you go do drills. Like we'll do like passing drills here and there, and then we play a game after. There's not much. There was thought, but there wasn't much science in it. But now everything is under a microscope, and everything is like, okay, um, we use this equipment. You know, this many passes you have to complete. Your touch has to be like this.
Right.
It's just fantastic. It's fantastic for the kids
Yeah.
to
The
learn.
theory is also there, right? Unlike before.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I
I,
think
I love
that.
it. I
Yeah.
love it. It's fantastic because
Yeah. That's what I noticed also. The theory of why you passing there. Unlike before, no, Lance or Claro, when we played whatever sport, basta pumasa ka lang, pasa mo lang. There's
yeah,
no reason behind it, right?
No,
Why
here
are you
there's
passing
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
science.
Sometimes you just have to
Yeah.
pass without necessarily realizing at what angle you have to pass it.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just have to execute. You pass, okay, pass.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's even the positioning.
Mm.
When you run your plays, you have to be in a certain place. The wing is a big part in the basketball court, but you gotta be in this exact spot in the wing. And speaking of, learning and being all around, that's of course an asset for any player, moving forward. Some guys change positions as they move from one age group to another because the
Mm.
coach sees different needs here and there. So of course, that's a great asset for any individual.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you wanted to chime in, Lance?
No, I agree with football being more open as a sport now because I do have a 9-year-old nephew who does play for Ateneo and also does football with Aspire Football Academy. So even now, he does Zoom training except for Monday and Sunday. So the development is continuous. So
that's with
the
Coach Antor, right?
yeah, that was with Coach Anto, yes.
Okay.
So he's there at our garage from 5 to 6 in the evening, 1 hour doing drills, dribbling. So at least even if we're locked in the pandemic, the development still continues. It's not the same, like we've mentioned. It's not the same even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's not this open, and I guess part of it is because more and more people are now appreciating the sport because it all starts with appreciation. The Ascals, the Miracle in Hanoi and everything built the foundation. But now with the PFL, more eyes are turning towards football already. That it has become a more open sport, especially to the masses. Kasi there was a mentality before na parang football, it's not the first sport that a child would choose. Kasi you have to buy pads, you have to buy all the gear. Now, well, you do have sponsors for it now. There are people more invested in the sport now. Parents, even parents alone, are some of them choose football before basketball because, well, you don't need height there, and it's still sport anyway. You teach the child life long lessons like teamwork and camaraderie, which are good once they grow up. So I am excited actually for uh, what is to come for football, and I hope that more people will just be able to appreciate what the PFL, what the ASCALs, and what everybody invested in the sport is building because the 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 momentum is building up. The momentum is building up, and we can only happen, or we can only wait for the time that it will really pop and blossom into the scene.
I think one thing that's nice with football actually is just like basketball, you can get started with just a ball. Then you can just start kicking around in your garage. Garage now because you got to stay home, everybody. But normally in normal conditions, you get a ball, you can start hitting the street like with a basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember before the pandemic, there were even kids in our area who used the basketball court for futsal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
There's
it's
like
futsal. Yeah.
for five aside, they just put what you call this, improvised nets. They built nets. They pieced together nets. So obviously, because they pieced together the nets, the size, the area of the net is not the same on both sides. But nevertheless, they were able to play the
Yeah.
game. Nevertheless, they were able to play futsal five aside and having lots of fun while playing it. So there's more appreciation when it comes to football, futsal, and all. And I guess that's the most exciting part of it. It will eventually blossom into
Mm-hmm.
something bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people are also confined maybe to their rooms or to their garage. So it's more of ball handling that they can work on now, given the situation. For all we might start seeing more OJ Porterias out there, that nasty footwork, dribblers,
Mhm.
and all that. But anyway, let's segue to our other part here as we break things down. We got to see how things normally work in the Philippines, where it's through the schools that we normally see
Yeah.
sports programs get channeled through and talent. But there are also clubs that we see. We see some of them in the Philippines, but this is something that's really took off overseas. Maybe perhaps you have different football clubs, Enrique, you're saying, where players mainly play with, let's say, FC Barcelona at the youth level and associate with them from the get go.
I think that's something that's worked so well in Europe as compared to here or the United States. I think the United States in terms of sports, in terms of sport, is kind of they've set a standard for themselves that they want to be the best because they put so much attention to it. But I think the reason why they can't quite crack football is because Europe, the way it's, well, for one, it's religion in Europe. Football is religion in Europe. Like, but on top of that, on top of the fact that it's religion, like it's the way that school is structured there is one thing, and the importance of trying to play at a high level at a young age. You know what I mean? Like Christian Pulisic, good example. He's American. He came through and started out in the American system, and then he thought, well, I'm better than this, and moved to Europe.
Hands down, you as GOAT.
Yeah, oh, he's a fantastic player. But
On his way there. Yeah, on his way
hmm,
Yeah.
there.
definitely. But I think that affects us here in the Philippines because the Philippines is really structured like the United States, wherein we go through schools.
Yeah.
Me personally, from my experience, I kind of mixed it up. I played a few years in Southridge, but I spent a good part of my development at Nomads, where I learned quite a bit, and then I played a few years for Kaya Elite as well. And for me personally, I learned more through playing for the clubs because the guys who come out in the clubs, we were usually in Kaya Elite, especially just based in the name, we were elite.
Yeah.
I was with guys who, the captain of Ateneo High School at the time was my teammate. The captain of the national team, I think, at, under I was 16, so I was about 15, 16 as well. So at about under 19 level, he was my teammate as well. I played with OJ Porteria and Kanshiro Daniels 1 year. You're gonna in club situations, you have to play with the best because if you're not the best, it's that competitive that you won't be there. Wherein in schools, you're kind of limited
Mm.
to that talent pool that you have there. And the only way that schools kind of topple that is through recruitment, which is a whole nother beast on its own. And, the best team of our age group, Claro, in football was FEU with Bugas and Amani
Mm.
and Amita. They were unbeatable, and we tried. Like
Yeah, they're fantastic. Those
we really
guys.
tried, and it was the most frustrating. I would have a game where they would not score against me one half, and we were winning 1-0, and
Oh
we'd lose the
no.
game 4-1 because Master Kim would just snap something and they'd score 4 goals. I don't even know how. Like they were that good, and that was because they were recruited. Like from a young age, they were recruited and they grew up together, and the way they treated it was kind of how clubs in Europe treat it. You know what I mean? So it's a structural thing, but it really depends. Like because it depends on the school first of all, because it depends on how the school treats sport,
Yeah.
and that differs depending on the school. I think if we want sport to improve in the Philippines, I think standardization is probably the best thing, the best word I can think of that would do that. Yeah.
I guess we got the answer on how FU does things so well because they really have a good sports program, no?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, across all
Oh,
sports.
yeah, consistent across.
Consistent, huh?
Name a sport, and they're competitive in it. Yeah,
Mhm.
not just
The-
the usual that you see.
They're
Yeah.
the nicest guys as well. Like we were scared of them on the field, but they were the nicest guys on the off the field. Every time I see like guys like Amita, because I still see Amita, we're gonna play against him. He plays for Kaya now. Guys like that. Every time I see them, they're so happy to see you always.
Very
Very
professional.
very professional, very um grounded people.
Hmm. Yeah, I can attest to that. I'd see guys like Paulo Bogas, Ray Joyel, and they're such nice guys, even though they're such beasts.
Yeah.
Because you're a kid, and let's say when you put yourself, you're a kid, and then you see pro players, you're scared they're so big or
Mm.
they're so good. But these guys, no, really nice, simple guys,
So
very respectful
playing
too.
against them, you're playing against them. The first time you play against them, you do get scared because first of all, Amani Aguinaldo, for example, was just head and shoulders bigger, taller than everyone else, and he played like it, and he played angry, and he was aggressive. So you thought that he was like that as a person,
Yeah.
and he's actually like a pretty chill guy. Like you wouldn't expect it based on how you saw them play. Yeah.
But that's true when you actually just to put some comments. Like I said, diba, like for Brent, we had actually a very good sports program, right? And the fact that they brought us overseas helps a lot. During my time, I think it was unheard of you could hear high school going to Japan or China, Korea. I had the privilege to do that, and you know, that helped our game to be better than just being stuck in a school system. So if your school system is uh, doesn't necessarily concentrate on the sports program, a certain kid's sports talent can be stunted. Wala siyang mangyayari sa kanya. And sayang lang, right? So, but if they concentrate on sports, and of course, may academics, you will see more better athletes, you know. And going against professional at a young age will help you leaps and bounds, diba? I mean, like, I'm sure it helped you, Enrique, no?
Yeah, definitely. Because, I mean, I started playing for Nomads first team
Mm,
um, at 16. I was training with them at 16, and then I started games.
yeah.
I was 17. So I became a regular player at 17. So after a year or a year and a half of training with them quite regularly, because their training at Nomads for the first team wasn't full time.
Yeah.
It was about 2 to 3 days a week. So I would go for maybe two of those days, and I'd sit on the bench for some of the games. But even just sitting on the bench, you'd learn a few things. And it helped me kind of see the standard that I had to get to.
Mm.
Because on the weekends you'd see guys like Phil Young Husband. Yeah, and this was peak Phil Young Husband. Like
Wow.
he was only about how old at that time? 20, 28.
Yeah, 20s.
Yeah.
At that
Yeah,
time.
Claro would watch some of my games sometimes.
Yeah.
And like when you see guys like that, and then you look at yourself, it changes the way you look at yourself, you know? Because when you're at the school level, it's like you could be the best there. But
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna say Phil Young Husband's shot at my current level. So it's a timing thing as well, where you want a time when you step up. Because
Mm.
sometimes I think maybe I stepped up a bit too early. But it's a timing thing, and
Right.
you have to know when when to step up. And I think that that's something that comes from your coaches,
Right.
and that's
Yeah.
something that comes from the people in um like the people who are backing you, not so much from you, because players are always going to think I can do it. So it's a systemic thing, and if there was a system that would help players decide when what the next step was, then that would instantly help um, the sport as a whole grow, because then you'll have players peaking at certain times at the right time
Yeah.
and improving when they're supposed to improve. So I think that that's what it is, really.
That's true. Also. Yeah. Yeah. Claro.
Yeah, I think one thing also is, of course, let's say you're into sports and you want to pick out a program where you can really learn. Of course, I think one thing you have to factor in is at the end of the day, the kids have fun at a young age. And then as you
Mhm.
get older, these guys start taking it to different levels. Maybe I want to win now. I just don't want to have fun. And then they start going, oh, maybe I want to use this to get a scholarship, or maybe I want to get a career out of it. But I think one thing that was really important here is wherever someone goes, um, one thing that people, a kid maybe, or one thing that parents have to factor in is their academics, of course.
Mhm.
That you go to a program where you are where you accept the system of education. You see that a kid gets to learn this certain style of things in the classroom also. So I think something it's a tough thing to balance,
Yeah,
academics
Mhm.
and of course
that's
whatever
something
sport.
Yeah.
that's something I was amazed, because now that I'm kind of involved in coaching and youth development, since I've been involved, I've been so surprised at how many parents are willing to really support their kids in pursuing full professional careers. Like, if we can help them go abroad and go through a youth academy and do that, they're very much game. Wherein, not to put my parents down or anything like that, but they wanted me to go to school. They wanted me to study. They wanted to graduate from a good university, and they preferred that rather than me pursuing a professional football career. And that plays a big part, because you can't do anything without your parents say. Like, I
At
couldn't
that
go
age.
Mhm.
I couldn't go abroad without having them sign a DSWD form. You know what I mean? And getting
Yeah.
that little
Mhm.
pass. So that's a big factor, and it's nice to see. It's nice to see parents supporting this career path for their kids.
Hmm. I think one thing also is, again, we were talking about Europe, right? And there are players who sign up for the different sporting clubs, but let's not forget that these sporting clubs also have programs for these kids to study under their house, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that goes beyond. I think Lance, you're mentioning it goes beyond football. You even have basketball guys like he said, was that Tony Parker, Lance, or Claudia?
Luka
Yeah.
Doncic and then
Luca
Doncic,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, he was a pro already. That's why he's a quote unquote rookie, because he knows what it's like to play in the pros in Europe. It's just
Mhm.
that it's his first year in the NBA.
Yeah,
I have an
he
I
already
have an
had
interesting
seasoning.
question.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
have an interesting question for. I'm gonna throw it out there, but I'm curious to see what Lance says, because I know what Clara thinks. But what do you think about Lamelo Ball?
oh god.
Because this is a very relevant question to the
Yeah.
topic,
You
because
went to
Mhm.
Australia, right?
he did he's
Yeah.
Yeah,
currently
I
Yeah.
went to
playing in it,
Australia, played for like a season in
Season, yeah.
Lithuania. Yeah. Mhm.
because his LeVar Ball thought, why am I gonna keep him studying if he just wants to play basketball? If he wants to play professional basketball, why am I gonna waste his time studying? because that's what
Well,
he did. He pulled him out of high school and threw him into the pros.
I could chime in real quick there just to
Go
Oh,
get the
ahead.
ball rolling for us. I think first is yes, the parents' decision. They fully support it,
Mhm.
but if it could be done like how the European academies do it, or maybe he could homeschool, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You
And
still got
I'm sure he did. You know what I mean? I don't think
yeah.
LeVar Ball is that um maybe ignorant is a good, like, the nicest word I can think of, but I don't think he's that blind a person to think that he doesn't need these basic, at least basic business skills,
yeah.
Mhm.
because when you're becoming a professional athlete is a whole nother set of things you need to learn. Like, you need to learn marketing skills, you need to learn accounting skills.
How to read a contract.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day you're signing so many things.
Might be signing your life away. You don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay. I'll answer that before I go to Lance. But for me, if there's a if you spot if your kid is like you could already see at a young age, right? That will be a professional athlete, whether it be in tennis, whether it be in swimming, whether it be basketball, football. You already see it as a parent. I'll pull him out and I'll also let him follow the sport that he loves. Yet give him the uh basic school requirements. That's which is accounting, tama, economics, entrepreneurship, and how to read a contract. Those four, law. I don't need my child to learn what Jose Rizal did for to be
yeah,
honest. No, really. I don't need my child. If I had a child who's I could see that may potential to be a superstar in tennis, let's say even tennis, I will not let her or him go through university and let them study who Jose Rizal is. For like whole Sam. like that whole Sam, I could dedicate that whole Sam for training and teach him how to who said result is through a movie or through just talking, just
Mhm.
talking conversely on a dinner table. The person doesn't have to study the who said result. Sorry, I'm like hitting the national the national
Yeah, but don't worry about it.
but no, to be honest, right? Or
Yeah.
that I mean I don't you don't need that.
Yeah.
So
Don't
I
worry. If I can jump in real quick
Go
yeah.
back to
ahead.
you. One quick
Mm.
thing is they cover it in grade school, high school. So the issue now is it's covered in college again, but you don't
Yeah,
need to
so
because it's covered already once.
yeah, what and
And
they're
that
gonna cover it
once
again in
was deemed
university.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going back to you, Claudia.
Yeah,
Sorry
so
to chime in.
I would pull them out. If I see my child that's gonna be a superstar in a sport and they love the sport, I'll pull them out and let them study homeschool. Let them do the basics. I will give them a tutor, help them teach the basics of reading a contract, marketing, the important life skills that they need. I'll do that. Yeah. So for me, okay lang yun sa akin yung ganun.
All right.
Lance.
So both sides homeschool sabay ikaw naman, Lance.
Yeah, so I have a lot of things to unpack regarding this one.
Ooh.
No, it's all good. For everything you say about Lavar Ball, for all the negativity and all, he was the good salesman for his children. If not for him, uh,
Lonzo.
Lonzo Ball wouldn't be a second overall draft pick just because of him saying this and that. We do know that it's impossible that he can defeat Michael Jordan one on one, or Lonzo is as good as Stephen Curry. But we listened because he has a way of delivering these quote unquote his own realities, and because of that kind of marketing, he was able to bump up the status or the worth of Lonzo. Well, it just so happened that now he's seasoned. We do know where Lonzo fits. He's not even one of the best in the league. He has a place, but he's not one of the best. I guess that's the same with LaMelo. He's an NBA talent. I just don't see him being one of the best. And the reason being, he there's a lot of NBA players right now who plays exactly like he is. The problem with the NBA right now, for him,
Lamelo.
Lamelo, it's a guard-driven league already. In the 90s, it was a forward and a center-driven league. You have a Hakeem, you have a Patrick Ewing, you have a David Robinson, you have a Tim Duncan. You win a championship. Now you have a Stephen Curry, you have let's say James Harden, you're one of the best teams. So it's guard driven, and he's a guard. So just imagine putting him in an NBA roster. No, sure, no doubt he'll be drafted. Pero once you put him through the works of guarding Lillard, guarding Chris Paul, guarding even the Aaron Fox, who was second year player, well, he'll get the gauntlet of from all of these talented guards. No doubt he'll make the league. And it's also a sigh of relief that Lavar has toned down on his crazy statements and let Lamelo earn his cred based on his talent. Let his kid work his way up the NBA draft rankings or whatever, and he will make it. I'm not sure what team it will be, but it's still up for judgment if he will be one of the best because he will run through a gauntlet of talented point guards in the NBA. There's no team in the NBA right now that doesn't have a talented point guard.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with him. So if he can go through it and pass with flying colors, then that's the only time we can tell na he's one of the once in a generational athlete. And speaking of once in a generational athletes, I have to give credit to the parents of Kai Soto because they allowed him to finish high school, but knowing that he is a once in a generation talent, they allowed him to develop in the USA, but at the same time, they were still there, guiding him, nurturing him. So he was not, well, to put it in another analogy, even though I'm a UP fan, Kobe Paras was left alone in the USA. So he didn't have that guidance of a parent with him. With Kai, he is constantly developing, but at the same time, his father, his family is still supporting him in the US. So it takes a village to really raise a child. It's not a cliche. So every one of us develop into what we are because of the people who help us along the way. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I really feel that Kai Soto will eventually make it to the big league. Not because he is talented, that's given. Not because he has the height, that's what's needed. And more importantly, he is sound when it comes to mentality. He knows that he has the support and he has the confidence to make it. So yun yung yun yung dahilan na tingin ko talaga Kai Soto will make it. And eventually Lamelo Ball will make it pero kakainin lang siya ng mga guards sa tingin ko. Lillard will score 50 on him on his rookie year. So that's possible. So ayan.
I mean, Lillard can score 50 on anyone on a good
Oh,
day.
yeah.
Is a handful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Got
he'll
to
have his
witness it
hands full
personally.
regardless of team. Even Jeremy Lamb. He's a talented guard.
And you got guys like Bradley Beal.
Oh, Bradley Beal.
Yeah.
Now that
It's a
might
deep league.
go to the Lakers. Wink,
Really?
wink. Yeah, wink,
Let's
wink.
see
Gosh,
how that
no.
develops.
You know who his agent is? Rich Paul. Wink,
Oh.
wink.
Alright.
Well, Dynasty.
But
Dynasty.
do you think
Stuff,
Kai
eh?
Soto's learning the history of Jose Rizal?
He
did
learned
that
it
in
during high school.
He
So
learned
he's
it in high
covered.
school.
Yeah. Don't
Yeah,
worry,
because
he's covered.
second year high school is Florante at Laura. Third year high school is No Limit Tangere. There's
Okay.
your Filipino is devoted. 1/4 of Filipino is devoted to that. And
Okay.
then fourth year, 1/4 of your school year is El Filibusterismo. So
Okay.
he does know who Jose Rizal is.
For
But
sure, he knows that.
it would
yeah.
take an alien not to know who Jose Rizal is.
Precisely.
Mhm.
I mean, even Stefan Schrock would know who Jose Rizal is. I
Yeah.
bet on that. I bet my house on that.
Yeah.
I'll
kilala ni
ask him.
Stefan.
You'll ask him, and
I'll
then
play against
Lawrence
him.
just have to get your house ready. I don't know.
I'll
Just be like,
Yeah, get your house ready.
after
I
a
doubt
game,
he'll know who he is.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, he has statues in Germany also, Jose Rizal.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, he does. He does. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's like if you see your time like Kai Soto, tama, tama, pull him out, let him get his skills up in the States, fully support him through, like through, like you're grooming him nicely at home, give him the life skills that he needs. You don't have to go to college and learn English
I think
again.
I think if there's anything that, like, if you compare someone like Kai Soto to someone like LaMelo Ball, a bit far, but I think the hard thing with LaMelo Ball is he was kind of thrown into so much at such a young age.
Hmm. Started
And-
early. Yeah, pursuing it
Yeah.
early.
and that's what I was saying earlier about um being given all of these things at a time where you might not be mentally or physically ready for it. So it could hurt you rather than make you better. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, that's what I think what happened to him in Lithuania, for example.
How old was he?
He was about 16, 15, 16. He hadn't grown yet.
Yeah,
It doesn't
really
have
young.
muscles yet. Yeah.
That's why
Bata pa.
nowadays he's quite big,
Mhm.
but back then not so much.
Yeah, I'll
But
just add up. I'll
yeah,
just add a few pointers. Uh, I guess for any athlete, for any talent that is, I guess you give them a certain dose of optimism that you can make it, but also at the same time you pull them back with some harsh sense of reality. Now, yes, if you develop, if you put time and your devotion to it, you can be something in that sport. Pero you should always have a fallback then. So I
Mhm.
guess that's what's happening with Kai, na with his father there. Na eventually, if it doesn't happen for you here, we can always go back to the Philippines and play college. So isa pa yun, you can always go back to
Mhm.
college. You can be 25, finish your degree, and it's still the same degree. And PBA teams will still get him if nothing happens in the NBA. That's fingers crossed. Pero I believe something will
I
happen
mean,
with him in the
I think with him, it's like the best thing about being at the highest level is
Yeah.
that if you
Mhm.
don't make it at the highest, if you're reaching for the stars, if you fall on the roof. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Mhm. Yeah, that's true. Good
you'll
point.
still be somewhere.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But before we pass it to Claro, I like what you said, Enrique. I think Lamelo was thrown nga to to the sharks, if you could say, like into life, no. And I guess it also has to be, if you're a parent, you also have to look at the coach, right? You have to look at the academy or the coach who's gonna be taking care of your kid. But if your coach is all skill, only teaching skill, but doesn't teach the mind or doesn't teach the heart to be uh, a grounded and humble athlete, you also, as a parent, you also have to assess that, diba? Um, I think that's also something that as parents of athletes, that's what they should also be doing. No? Look at the coach. Look at if your coach is the one that's, because the coach can make or break you. If the coach hates you, even though you're the most talented person in there, he could bench you, right? But if your coach is level-headed, etc., he'll see the talent, he'll see something in you, and that person could develop you. That coach could develop you. So, um, again, if you want to pull out your kid and you could see special talent like Kai, his surrounding has to be has is very as important. Not saying that studies are not important. It is, but again, you could help get a tutor, do homeschool, learn the basics of economics, accounting, business.
I mean,
Diba?
conversely, I know people who um preferred preferred being in school because it took their mind off the sport
Okay.
Mhm.
and it
Good
gave
point.
them something to look forward to, you know? Like having something like school and having something that they weren't 100% into gave them a bigger appreciation of their sport. Yeah, and I know a few people like that, and it at the end of the day, it always depends on the kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it always
that's
depends
also true. Yeah,
on,
that's also
on
true.
him.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the midst of everything, there's the sport and everything. What's important is, whether you're a kid or you're someone who's pursuing the sport as a pro, is that we all have fun also at the end. These are
Yeah,
games that we love, that we enjoy all the way, whether it be, as a spectator or in the case of Enrique, even as a player in the professional level. You got to
yeah,
enjoy. And when you're a kid, of course, you got to make sure you get through school first. That's always something important. In the midst of everything here and having fun with your sport and doing what you do, of course, don't forget to study, nonetheless. So fantastic stuff. Before we wrap up, Enrique, perhaps you could tell us where people could find you on social media, and maybe you could invite people to support your team, Maharlika FC.
yeah. So yeah, my I'm on Instagram, and yeah, I'm on Instagram. I don't have a Twitter because I don't like some of the things I see on Twitter. Not a fan. But yeah, so my Instagram handle is at Enrique Ortiz Stick. So that's Enrique Ortiz TIC. And then also follow Maharlika FC. Um, Super excited about that team because the spirit of the team is so good. And I think if even if we might not be the most competitive team, like we're not gonna, I think we'll compete, but we're not at that level of a United City to the eyes of the public. Maybe to me we are, but but even if you guys don't think that, I think it's still something to watch because the people behind the scenes are fantastic. Anton Del Rosario and Troy and all of the Roxy and all of those guys have set up such a good environment, and I think that Maharlika Manila is gonna, long after I'll be gone from that team, I think it's gonna be going somewhere. I think eventually that team will make the Champions League, the AFC Champions League.
Okay, so that does it for this episode of Who the Heck Are We? It's the gang here again. Yours truly, Claro Manzano. We have our walking Google with analytics, Lance Fernandez, Claudia Perrine. Last but not the least, we had our guest panelist today in Enrique Ortiz of Maharlika FC. So if you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Also, give us a follow on Facebook and on Instagram. Just search Who the Heck Are We, followed by a question mark. So we hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next week.
Ooh, okay.